Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we are talking about India because India is threatening to jail Facebook and Twitter employees. And my question is, can the internet survive so many different governments with so many different rules? Now, this is coming from the Wall Street Journal, and I thought this was absolutely interesting, although a bit terrifying. And here's what's going on. India's government has threatened to jail employees, as I've mentioned, of Facebook, also its WhatsApp unit, and Twitter, as it seeks to quash political protests and gain far-reaching powers over discourse on foreign-owned tech platforms. And basically, this is according to multiple sources. And also according to these sources, the warnings are in direct response to the tech company's reluctance to comply with data takedown requests essentially from the Indian government related to protests by farmers there that have made international headlines as of late. Now, at least some of the written warnings by the Indian government cite specific India-based employees at the risk of arrest if the companies don't comply. And obviously that's a real serious issue. These threats basically mark an escalation of India's efforts to pressure United States-based tech companies at the moment when those companies are obviously looking to get a serious foothold into India, as it's the second most populous nation on the planet and a growing tech market as well. Some of the government's requests for data involve WhatsApp, which is vastly popular in the Indian population and promises users encrypted communication unable to be read by outside parties. We know that is absolutely incorrect. I've done multiple videos on that, but nevertheless, that is the belief that many people have, and it is more secure than just standard texting through your carrier, whether you're in India, the United States, or wherever you are. Nevertheless, Facebook is reading those, and I've done videos on that. Now, a WhatsApp spokesman said that the company complies with data requests that are, quote, consistent with internationally recognized standards, including human rights, due process, and the rule of law. Now, a Facebook spokesperson said the company, quote, responds to government requests for data in accordance with applicable law and our terms of service. Now, legal analysts are saying that India has been making new rules that grant its leaders power over online discourse to a degree that is basically unmatched elsewhere among quote-unquote open societies. These rules require tech companies to appoint executives that actually reside in India to deal with government requests, including a contact person for, and I quote, 24/7 coordination with law enforcement agencies and officers to ensure compliance with orders, and that is according to these rules. Now, these rules would also compel companies to remove content that undermines national security, public order, and quote-unquote decency or morality. And I think herein lies the problem. Countries have different laws and different concepts of justice, freedom of expression, freedom of press, law enforcement, and on and on and on. Furthermore, each government has its own relationship with the internet and big tech like Facebook, Google, and all these platforms. We have seen every major company, for example, from Apple to Google, bend to the will of the Chinese government over the years. Google quashing search results, Apple, basically making products available after essentially giving in to various privacy or encryption regulations that the Chinese government has, because those two are trying to continue to embed themselves in one of the world's largest economies, the largest population, and it's a growing population of tech adoption. And so obviously Apple and Google see that as a very target-rich environment. More recently, the Australian government, not nearly as populous as China or India or even the United States, but nevertheless a major government on the planet, they forced Google and Facebook's hand by essentially redefining the relationship those two had with news publishers, basically ensuring that Google and Facebook would pay for publishers to publish their content. It makes a little more sense for Google than for Facebook, and Facebook originally denied that. Now they have backpedaled and said they would. Some countries have stringent privacy laws, other countries have virtually none. We are all over the map. If you look at the group of countries known as the European Union, they have the GDPR. We go to other countries such as China and some others where you have no privacy whatsoever. And so as much as I rail against the data mining and privacy violations of big tech, I do understand the bind that they're in. So I think overall the question becomes, as we are talking about the survival of the internet, do we need a kind of United Nations, if you will, for big tech, but fully binding around the world, basically a set of rules that big tech can adhere to that would ideally be accepted in all countries across the planet. And then how would you get more autocratic or authoritarian countries to actually keep in line with something like that? We're already seeing a bifurcation between China and the West in terms of the internet. I actually wrote an article for Forbes on that in 2018. I've done videos and daily podcasts on that, on how the internet is basically becoming a very enclosed and encapsulated internet for China and its partners in the Belt and Road Initiative, as China becomes the major internet service provider for those parts of the world, versus the West, Europe, Canada, the United States, Australia, South Africa, etc., that have a more open and free-flowing concept of what the internet is, as well as freedoms of press, expression, and all these kinds of things. How do we get on one page? We are starting to see a lot of countries carve out specific requirements for this. Even if you look at the United States, California has data privacy laws called the CCPA. Illinois has a biometric security law. New York has SHIELD. Some states have nothing. And so when you are looking at a Facebook or a Google, and again, I will always rail against data mining and privacy and all of that, it has got to be a walking minefield for these companies to essentially work in all of these states, knowing that Illinois has to basically do something, along the lines of California, but California is more, and Texas has none, and Alabama has none, and New York has something, and on and on and on. Not to mention every country on the planet, of which there are about 200. This is a huge issue. And I think as we are moving forward, this free flow of information and ideas is an amazing thing, even though it is basically coming with things like misinformation, disinformation, which I've obviously talked about in the past. But what do we do with this? Do we let a government that we are very friendly with, very allied with, and the United States considers India a very deep ally, a very deep partner, but this is essentially the antithesis of what US tech companies want to do? We don't want to see India do that, and I would imagine India would hopefully not want to see us do that as well, as we are good friends. So how do we deal with these things? I think this is an important question because the internet has made the world a whole lot closer, even though our laws are a lot more distant. And that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube and Facebook as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.